Hi guys, my name's Chris and I live in Australia, and today I want to talk about a topic, a question actually, and you guys can chime in of course as well. Is the cost of living crisis real? So a while ago, it feels like a while ago, but earlier in the year, I went onto SBS Insight, a show where they get a whole bunch of different people from around the country to talk about a topic, and the topic that we talked about on the show that I was on was tough times, about the cost of living crisis. And the producers, the way they structured the show, they find people from different ends of the spectrum doing different things. And I found it very interesting. They sat me specifically next to another bloke from down in New South Wales called Jack Henderson. He was a multi-millionaire with, I think he said he had 28 houses or properties or something like that, runs a real estate buyer's agency. So they put him and myself next to each other to kind of draw a contrast of, two guys both working their rings off, two different outcomes, two different ways that they're existing in the cost of living crisis. And his kind of stance around it was there is no cost of living crisis. It doesn't exist. He's never seen cafes more full, never seen more new cars on the road. Where I was coming from the other end saying, no, this is real. I've picked up extra jobs. So today we're going to have a look through that, but first I just want to quickly address a couple of pointed out in the comments, this kind of studio sitting style video. Some aren't quite a fan of it, they enjoy me walking around. Now, I will be back to doing the walking around videos, guys. Unfortunately, I've been having some issues. I've got two types of tendonitis in my right ankle right now. Hang on, here they are. Been on and off crutches for a couple of weeks right now. It's been quite frustrating. Some days, a couple of days straight, I'll be good walking around and then won't be able to walk around, can't put any weight on it. And trying to sort it out, but it just needs some time to heal, of course, which is limiting me from doing the walking videos. How did it happen? How did the two types of tendonitis happen? Well, it was a dark, dreary morning, and then I was walking down an alleyway, and Elbow and Chalmers bailed me up, and they said, "Oi, Chris!" And they pinned me up against the wall, and then they just started punching into my ankle saying, "Stop talking crap about the government, stop talking about this cost of living crisis thing that's happening and it doesn't exist. GDP is up," and they just kept wailing at me, "GDP is up and that's all that matters." And then left me with the busted up ankle. That's a joke, guys. That didn't really happen. It was an injury from playing some drums, and just hasn't had enough time to recover yet. I keep putting too much strain on it. But all jokes aside, leads us straight in to today's topic: is the cost of living crisis real? So the common thing we hear from people who say the cost of living crisis doesn't exist is, I see cafes and restaurants are full all the time. I see brand new cars on the road. Therefore, people are doing good. I guess to unpack it a little bit in this video, we're going to have a look at two aspects. There's a lot of things we could talk about, but we're just going to look at two things. And the first thing is wealth inequality. Second thing is doom spending. So when it comes to wealth inequality within Australia, it's been getting wider and wider from that, the haves and haves not. So at the current point that we're in right now, the top 10% of wealthiest households in the country have 15 times the wealth of the lowest 60% of the people living in the country. So that's a huge divide and a huge scale of difference. Across the last few years, the top 10%, their assets have absolutely soared. Their investment properties have increased in equity, a lot more value in them. They've been able to jack up their rent prices to meet the market, so they've got more cash flow coming through. Their stocks have increased in value, so their portfolios overall has significantly gone up. Some have even taken it further with investment properties that have been completely paid off already, and they didn't need to jack up their rents, but they've jacked up their rents anyway because the market's dictated. They say, "Oh, well, we don't need to pay the interest or anything like that anymore on the loan, but because everyone else is charging $800 a week for rent, we can probably slip it up to $800 as well." And they're making more and more money coming through than ever. Also in that equation as well, some in the more wealthier cities, so Sydney, Melbourne, they've sold up and they've moved across to more affordable areas, and they've been able to pocket quite a significant amount of equity, which has increased the quality of their life. So the top 10% of wealth holders in the country right now, they're the ones who have benefited quite a bit over the last couple of years. And as a result, they're the ones that are filling out the cafes, they're filling out the restaurants, they're buying the new cars right now. They're the ones going out on the domestic holidays and the overseas holidays. They're traveling all around. They're splurging and splashing cash. But The top 10%, there's different scales in the top 10%, of course. So some are absolutely splurging cash, splashing cash. Others just have a budget set aside where going out to a restaurant 3 or 4 times a week, it doesn't impact their budget. It's within the budget, it's affordable to them. So there is that class of people right now that exist, and their wealth is continuing to grow. Now, the top 10%, they have a large amount of disposable income right now. They can splurge, they can splash, they can have in budget to live a very comfortable and affluent lifestyle. Whereas flip the coin over, there's no coin in my hand, but flip the coin over, other side of the coin, we move across to the lower 60%. So these are the people that, they don't have the investment properties, they don't even have a house that they're paying off or anything like that most of the time. A lot of the people in this, they're not buying the new cars. They're holding onto their cars for 10, 20 years. They've still got their car from 15 years ago. They're like, I just got to keep servicing it, keep replacing the tires, just keep it running. I'm going to run it to its death. Its death might be at 25, 30 years down, like old for the vehicle. So they're holding onto their cars. They're not buying the new cars. There is no luxury spending. There is no going out to cafes and restaurants multiple times a week or anything like that. It might be reserved for a special occasion. Maybe a perfect example myself. So Mother's Day just happened and I took my mum out to the local tavern and I paid for her $19 seniors meal and I had to pay, I think it was like 27 bucks for fish and chips. And that was my time to go to the cafe, or not the cafe, it was a cafe in a pub. It was like a brunch menu thing for Mother's Day. But before that, I'd been out to a restaurant or a cafe since, I think it was February, where I caught up with a couple of friends. It was our once in 6 month catch up. And it was just grabbing a pub meal. I didn't even drink any beers or anything like that because I was like, it's too tight on the budget this month. So the lower 60%, they're not splurging, they're not spending out, they're not going to the restaurants, they're not buying new cars. Their money is getting eaten up by rent, it's getting eaten up by those who've gotten home ownership in the early years of it, it's getting absolutely eaten up by the interest rates, the interest payments to the bank on their mortgage. It's absolutely decimating them right now. Their disposable income is minuscule. So those doing okay right now is that top 10%, and then the 30% between the lower 60 and the top 10%, that 30% gap there, they're doing okay. They're doing okay right now. They're seeing not much of a change or a difference. They're like, oh, life just goes on. I'm not impacted here, but I'm not like super getting ahead or anything like that. So that 40%, the top 40% right now, more likely to say there is no cost of living crisis. It's all fine. I go out to cafes, I see them full. I bought a new car and I've noticed everyone else is driving a new car around on the road as well. People must be doing okay. But to an extent, this is the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, or a frequency of illusion. So to explain this a little bit, say if you were buying a new car yourself, after you buy a new car, you start to notice everyone else who's bought a new car around you, or you start to notice everyone else who has the same type of car as you. Subconsciously, your brain starts to be wired across to noticing things now that you're new to that information. Once you have that new car, you start to see new cars a lot more frequently than you would have without buying that new car, because your brain is wired across saying, new car, I have a new car, look, oh, there's a new car as well, oh, there's another new car. Whereas if you hadn't bought the new car, you may not be paying attention to that. So it's a frequency of illusion, and it makes it seem a bit more common than it actually is. Also, in parallel to the Baader-Meinhof effect, we're seeing a lot of echo chamber-like thought. So an example of that would be, I go to a cafe, not me personally, but hypothetically in the scenario, I go to a cafe 4 times per week and the cafe is always busy and full. Therefore, all cafes are busy and full, and therefore all the people are going to cafes, and therefore, as a result of that, there is no cost of living crisis, there is no issues because the cafes are full. But here's the cognitive bias to it. So if you're going out to cafes 4 days per week, you're only going to be seeing people who are doing okay or well off. Now, the people most impacted from the cost of living crisis, they will not be in the cafes. They won't be able to afford to go to the cafes. So you're only seeing people who are doing okay or well off. That creates that cognitive bias and that echo chamber of, well, everyone around me in this cafe seems to be doing okay, so therefore everything is fine. Now, a different angle, and this could be confusing some people a little bit when they say are out at the restaurants or they are out at the cafes, and you see a lot of younger people in the restaurants and the cafes, and you think, well, hang on, a lot of younger people are in that 60%, that lower 60%, and are not wealthy, but how come they're always out at restaurants? How come they're always out at cafes? And that brings us into, it's an angle I wanted to kind of investigate a little bit here, and it's called doom spending. So there was a release from the University of Technology, Sydney, where they said that 29% of Australians are now doom spending. And on top of that, 70% of young people in Australia think they will never own property in this country. So doom spending is where people get their money in and then they just spend it to make themselves feel good. They'll go and spend it on holidays, on experiences, on shopping, on luxury items. They'll get the new car if they want the new car. They'll just spend that money so they feel good. They have that reprieve of like, it's all fine. I've got all these cool things around me now and all these cool experiences to take my mind off the crippling anxiety of my future being non-existent, to being a homeowner, having stability, being able to retire. They're spending the money now to feel good now. It's becoming an anti-culture to the traditional money management where you'd start to save and over a long period of time you'd be able to afford a house and you'd pay the house off and then you'd have stability across your lifetime from that savings and not spending. And eventually you get to retirement, you've got your house paid off and you've got a comfortable retirement from there. That's the kind of traditional money management, the traditional pathway that many generations went through. But put it this way, 70% of young people in Australia right now think they will never be homeowners, they can never afford any property in this country, and they also believe that they'll never be able to retire. They think the system is broken. So if young people fundamentally believe at core that the Australian dream is gone skis, okay, it's out the window, not going to happen. Well, that's the biggest purchase of their life, a home that's no longer on that pathway of life that they're going through. So instead of saving for the home and spending them hundreds of thousands of dollars on property, well, they're going to go spend it on other things. They're going to buy that new car because they don't need to save up, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, $100,000 for a deposit. They're going to buy the new car. They're going to go out on the holiday each year, maybe 2 holidays each year. They're going to go out to the cafes. They're going to go out to organise with their friends, going out to, say, a Korean restaurant every Saturday and have a soju night. They'll do that kind of stuff because they're no longer saving towards the house. And that's where, I'm a millennial, so my generation will kind of train into that, great Australian dream, save up, try buy a home. It's just recently that's kind of shifted away and a lot of us have fallen behind now, myself included. But that traditional money management of saving up, younger generations in mine, they're not doing it or they're not interested in doing it. They want the experiences, they want the gratification now. So more and more are starting to do it. 29% of Australia currently is starting to doom spend and that number is increasing. 70% of young Australians have lost hope towards home ownership. They think the system's failed on them. So they're like, you know what, let's just spend my money now. I'm going to go out to the cafes. And you think cafes? Well, pubs. My generation, millennials and older, we used to go to the pub. Younger generations, Gen Z, they're not drinking as much. They're not drinking alcohol as much. They're not interested. They think pubs are uncool, and they're probably right. It's just, at this point, it's just filled up with TAB betting systems, pokies, and you've got to listen to some old fuckwit pretty much tell you how he's rebuilt his car 4 times. It's not that appealing after you've done it, multiple times across a decade or so for myself. It's not that appealing, and Gen Z is not that interested, so they don't go to the pubs anymore. They are more about healthy lifestyles, they're more about wellness, so they go to cafes in the morning. Wake up early, do some workouts, go to a cafe instead of getting blotto on the beers until 2 a.m. So Rome was one of the greatest civilizations in recorded human history, and eventually there was a fall. The fall of Rome. And there were several observations that we had as Rome began to fall. And I'm going to run through a couple of comparisons from Rome to now, and you let me know in the comments if you think we are on the same trajectory as Rome. The Romans had bread and circuses. We now have Uber Eats and Netflix. The Roman culture, as it collapsed, moved across to a focus on leisure and self-gratification. Now we have people laying on couches, rotting away, scrolling screens for their own self-indulgence. There was economic despair across Rome. As the elite lived lavishly, the majority started to live in absolute poverty. Currently, we're at the point where the top 10% has 15 times the wealth of the lowest 60%. So I'll leave you with this. Based from what you yourself out there see from your own I guess, self-perceptions across the world. Are we in a cost of living crisis? Do you see a cost of living crisis around you? Whereabouts do you think you're sitting in that spectrum right now on wealth? Are you in the top 10%, in the lowest 60%, depending where you sit? Do you think that impacts on your outlook of, is the cost of living crisis real? And additionally, when it comes to Rome and the comparisons I just drew, do you think that we are on the inevitable decline like the Romans? Do you think we're at the end? Do you think we're on our way to the end? Do you think civilization is about to break? Are we showing the signs and the cracks? Or do you think we're already well too far gone? Or if you think that we are growing and we're stronger than ever, leave your thoughts. The comments section's yours, and I'll see you guys in the next one.